Welcome to Value Gene Insight Conversations. Today, we are unpacking the strategic evolution of the U.S. food and beverage co-manufacturing industry.
Right, which is a market that has expanded to roughly $120 billion by 2025. It is growing at, 2 to 4 times the rate of the broader food industry.
Before we begin, we would like to thank several contributors whose perspectives and feedback help shape this study and strengthen its practical relevance. Special thanks to Sherry Montres, Brett Conrad, David Skinner, and Carl Schreier. We sincerely appreciate their support.
And, well, looking at this through the lens of our consulting work at Value Gene, the mission of this deep dive is to examine a critical transition. We have to look at how the industry is shifting from simply selling machine hours.
Yes, shifting toward building an operating system for profitable complexity.
Exactly. Because to understand how to operate a modern manufacturing platform, we first have to understand exactly who is buying the capacity right now.
Right. And the traditional model, those long, uninterrupted production runs spanning weeks at a time, is really being systematically dismantled.
It is. We are seeing 3 converging demand forces driving that change. The first force is the explosive growth of small brands.
Emerging capital-light brands.
Right. They gained a massive 5.5 percentage point share in health and functional products recently.
Which means they now hold roughly 40% of that entire segment.
They do, but the operational challenge is that they require flexible minimum order quantities, deep formulation R&D, and, well, a very high-touch service model.
Meanwhile, pulling from the exact opposite direction, we have the second force.
Yes, private label. Private label now accounts for a record 20.5% of U.S. grocery sales.
Which translates to a $280 billion market in 2025.
Exactly. And grocery retailers are demanding staggering national-level volume from co-manufacturers, but they require it with exacting cost controls.
Right. Razor-thin margins and strict contractual rigor.
And then the third force is selective outsourcing by large CPGs. Heritage consumer packaged goods companies are coming to co-mans because they desperately need agility.
They need to protect boutique brand integrity, manage overflow, and launch complex innovations, right?
Yeah.
Like functional beverages that their rigid internal networks simply cannot handle nimbly.
Precisely. They are using external platforms to access boutique economics without contaminating the craft brand story with heavy corporate overhead.
So let us push back on the traditional understanding of outsourcing here. Historically, we viewed this as simply renting an outsourced factory for overflow.
Right, a tactical procurement decision.
But modern co-manufacturing is no longer just an outsourced factory. It is an outsourced balance sheet.
That is a phenomenal way to frame it for the listener.
Right, because by utilizing a co-manufacturer, our clients completely bypass the 9-figure capital expenditures required for greenfield facilities.
Yes, they shift all of that execution risk and depreciation directly to the operator.
And convert a fixed, burdensome capital requirement into a flexible, variable cost.
Exactly. And because these demand profiles are so polarized from high-touch agility to scaled volume, we can no longer view the market as discrete segments.
We have to view it as a continuous spectrum.
We do. And operating safely on that spectrum requires highly deliberate positioning.
If we contrast the ends of that spectrum, at the small brand end, you structurally see higher per-unit margins, but it comes with high client churn and deep innovation support requirements.
Whereas at the large brand and private label end, you get incredible scale, but you take on significant client concentration risk and demand for unyielding cost efficiency.
Which leads us to what we define as strategic drift.
Right. We observe operational chaos when operators attempt to serve both ends of the spectrum without investing in dual-track operating systems.
This brings to mind an insight from David Skinner from our study. He noted that taking on a massive retail contract might look transformative on paper.
Because the top-line revenue jump is undeniable.
Right, but it introduces dangerous, unpriced variables.
Yes, like new allergen protocols or different temporary labor requirements. Suddenly, a changeover that used to take 2 hours now requires an entire 12-hour shift for a full chemical washdown.
And your throughput is fundamentally crippled. But, we have to challenge the margin dynamic there.
How so?
Well, if the margins are structurally higher at the small brand end, why doesn't every platform simply stay there? Is it the inevitable graduation effect?
Yes, where successful brands outgrow their co-manufacturer's capacity, that forces platforms to move up the spectrum.
Because if you fail to scale alongside your winning brands, you just lose them to bigger players.
Exactly. And managing the long tail of high-churn emerging brands requires an analytical maturity that many struggle to maintain as their SKU counts multiply into the thousands.
So, regardless of where a platform anchors itself, the baseline requirements to stay in business have fundamentally changed.
The capability threshold is rising rapidly, complexity is increasing across the board, and the only path to survival is monetizing it.
We call this the professionalism gap. For example, traceability with FSMA compliance.
Right, the Food Safety Modernization Act. You must be able to trace every ingredient back to its origin farm within hours.
And sustainability is another critical area. We look at Refresco targeting recycled boutique.
Which is not just for public relations. It is a physical mechanism required to meet strict retailer mandates. But recycled plastic behaves differently under heat, requiring precise machine calibration.
If you cannot source and run it efficiently, you simply do not win the contract.
And this ties directly into technological infrastructure. We are seeing a mandatory transition away from spreadsheet scheduling.
Right, toward full ERP and warehouse management system integrations.
You absolutely cannot manage a modern supply chain on an Excel document.
So the playbook we advise operators to use really centers around learning to monetize customization.
Yes, we emphasize the immediate implementation of menu pricing.
Instead of absorbing operational complexity as overhead, operators must charge explicitly for it.
Right. A mid-run line changeover has a price. A super small batch run has a price. Specific QA testing is strictly on the menu.
Because without it, customization just completely erodes margins. We consistently find a critical lack of true SKU-level profitability visibility across the industry.
Which makes the mechanism of SMA single-minute exchange of die an absolute necessity.
Standardizing setups to reduce changeover times from hours to single-digit minutes. It is the only way to manage format variance.
Exactly.
But if we aggressively apply menu pricing to every small changeover or QA hurdle, don't we risk suffocating the very emerging brands driving the industry's growth?
We hear that concern, but the actual failure is simply not knowing our true cost to serve in the first place.
Providing subsidized complexity is a threat to the operator's balance sheet.
It is. Transparently pricing complexity does not suffocate viable brands. It forces discipline in their business models.
It forces them to reconsider if an exotic ingredient that requires a 4-hour washdown is truly essential to their proposition.
Precisely. Brands relying on unpriced operational favors are structurally unsound. When you give away machine hours, you cannibalize your enterprise value.
And that translates directly into the investor playbook and deal economics.
It does. Based on our analysis of over 100 co-manufacturing companies and 32 recent acquisitions, private equity valuation is driven by systemic discipline.
Not just total capacity.
Right. We see multiples ranging from approximately 8x EBITDA up to 14x.
Let us use some specific deal comparisons. Look at Treehouse Foods. They commanded only about an 8x multiple on a $2.9 billion deal.
Largely due to customer concentration risk, their top 10 customers made up 57.1% of their total sales.
If you lose just one, the revenue model collapses.
Conversely, well-positioned platforms like Shira's Foods commanded a 10 to 11x multiple.
And beverage and bakery platforms such as Refresco and Rise Baking cleared the 12 to 14x range.
Supported by massive structural barriers to entry, since building those modern plants costs hundreds of millions of dollars.
So we categorize the market into two primary investment archetypes. Archetype A represents the high-mix platforms.
Right. The agile facilities at the small brand end where value is unlocked via margin expansion and scheduling optimization.
And private equity sponsors ideally acquire these at around 40% utilization.
Yes, to provide runway to scale without immediate, massive capital expenditures.
Then you have Archetype B, which are the scaled platforms.
Anchored at the large brand and private label end, value there comes from operational leverage and procurement synergies.
When conducting diligence on either archetype, we utilize the Value Gene 20-question diligence scorecard.
And bucket 5 is absolutely critical.
That is the data and financial resilience bucket.
It is the ultimate test of whether a platform actually understands its SKU-level profitability and how its working capital behaves under severe forecast swings.
So to synthesize the private equity strategy with an analogy, Acquiring an Archetype A platform is akin to buying a high-end, custom workshop.
Well, archetype B is like acquiring a commercial freight railway.
A private equity sponsor must honestly assess which type of operational asset their internal team is actually equipped to drive.
Precisely. If your team's expertise relies purely on lean operations and procurement consolidation, buying a custom workshop will end in disaster.
So, bringing our analysis to a close, the main takeaway is that the future belongs to platforms that build operating systems, not just raw capacity.
Right. It requires deliberate positioning, rigorous menu pricing, and true operational professionalism.
Well, we want to leave you with one final provocative thought. As PE-backed consolidation accelerates, and the most agile small brand cool manufacturers are acquired and scaled up the spectrum,
Graduating into archetype B operator,
we inadvertently create a massive capacity vacuum at the bottom of the market.
effectively choking off the necessary infrastructure for the next generation of food and beverage innovation.
It is a structural risk we all must consider.
Thank you for listening to Value Gene Insight Conversations. To deep dive, please see the show notes. For more on food industry topics, visit valuegeneconsulting.com or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. If today's discussion resonated with you, please do not hesitate to reach out to us to continue this dialogue. Have a great day.